Hey guys, what's going on? Winter Wolf here. Sorry again for some of the changes in programming. We are having some location logistical difficulties getting King Z up to the secured bunkers, the various sites in the Great White North that he's currently operating out of. So I'm going to be handling this one on my own, kind of like he did last week. I think he is putting together some of his own thoughts on the Ahsoka show on episode 5, which I'm going to do my thoughts up right now. And hopefully we'll be able to kind of post those up in tandem for you guys as soon as we can get them out there. Well, let's not waste any time. I just wanted to get into it because I'm excited to talk about Ahsoka this week because I took the week off from episode 4, and King Z had you covered. You can go check out his Ahsoka episode 4 solo review. He handled business for me last week. Much appreciated, King Z. So let me take the ball and run with it on episode 5. Guys, like you might have seen in the thumbnail, I'm thinking episode 5 pretty but pointless. It was a lot of cool imagery. They introduced a couple of nifty concepts, but overall I feel like again this show doesn't have enough runtime to mess around and take these little detours and these side quests. And I think that one of my main complaints, and we'll talk about it more in details after I give the synopsis of the episode, is this episode way oversold on the member berries. And while it was nice to get a little member berry sundae, it doesn't count for much. It doesn't do anything for Ahsoka's narrative. It doesn't move this show forward. And it's like, oh, that was nice. It's like pulling down like a photo album or like an old high school yearbook and just like going through old pictures. It's like, yeah, it's cool for a minute, but like your life has gone on since those moments, and you should have been hopefully doing new things, learning new things, continuing to grow and achieve goals, things like that. But that's not the impression I get with this show. We're 5 episodes in, and I know nothing more than I did in June when, we started talking about this show coming up. I know nothing more about Baylan Skoll. I know nothing more about his apprentice, Shin. I know nothing more about the Baroness, Morgan Elsbeth, who was featured in the Mandalorian show and on the backdoor pilot when Ahsoka showed up and dueled with her. I don't know anything more about her. The Rebels crew through 5 episodes, like we get Sabine, we get Ahsoka, we get Chopper, we don't get Zeb, we don't get Ezra, Kanan's obviously not available for obvious reasons, but they don't feel like they're Rebels selves. And I think it's once again a lot of the same complaints that we throw out there about deconstructing male heroes. I wonder if there's a little bit of deconstructing just heroes in general, because I'm going to include the ladies in this now. Like, what is it about the only story present day Hollywood can seemingly tell are heroes that are, getting, they're 10 years past their prime selves or when we first got to know them, and they're all a bunch of like wretched, miserable, soulless husks of who they used to be. Like, what's interesting or compelling about Ahsoka in this show? Like, nothing. Like, I don't know. What has she been up to? Don't know. Like, what's interesting about Sabine in this show? She's acted nothing like Sabine from Rebels at all outside the first episode where she's on, the speeder bike runaway from, planetary security and not backing down. But everything since then, she's been subdued. She hasn't had any of the quirk, any of the sarcasm, any of the wit. Not a whole lot of real ingenuity. I mean, she hacked the droid's explosive head to get some coordinates. I mean, I guess that counts. But this is all paper thin. I mean, this is like a house of cards that just with really pretty backgrounds printed on the back. And like sooner or later, there's just going to be an episode that absolutely torpedoes it. And I think after episode 5, I think it's probably coming soon. Because I think they put everything they had into 5, relying on bringing back Hayden Christensen to do yet another, pre-Vader Anakin appearance, like how they stuck him in Kenobi as both roles, as Anakin and as Vader. But I mean, you can only go to that well so many times, and I wonder if this show is taking for granted, or it's just assuming too much of folks that are watching it, that they've watched all of the Clone Wars, that they've watched all of Rebels, and they would have any of that frame of reference to know that Ahsoka is Anakin's former pupil, and that there's a bond, and her issues with the Jedi Council, all these things. I think that most people don't know that side of any of the story. Casuals watching this show or casuals not watching this show, because the numbers that are out there aren't really encouraging on this show's behalf. I mean, they can claim all they want about 14 million worldwide viewers, but we know how those numbers skew. We know that they don't exactly count a view as you watched all of a show. You could have clicked it on and gone and take a dump, never come back, and they're going to count that as a view. So I mean, whatever. I guess it's overall the show is not impressing me outside of a couple of moments here or there. It was a decent first episode, but so this show right here, this episode, let's just get into that. Right, it's three sets of scenes really, or three positions in the show. Ahsoka's in the temple somehow, the world between worlds. She got there without going through a temple. I mean, she's got to sort out some personal stuff there with Anakin because reasons. General Hera, obviously disobeyed the council order and is bringing assistance to Ahsoka's position where, she was calling in for backup before the bad guys took off with the super duper Omega hyperspace jumping ring that they built. Hera shows up with, Captain Carson and a couple of X-Wings, obviously. For some reason, Hera's going for a Mother of the Year award. She brought her young son into a potential, clandestine war zone. Okay, I mean, I guess that's doing these days. I mean, I can't leave my kid alone in the car for 40 seconds without somebody calling DCF or whatever. This chick's doing a cross-galaxy jump and leaving her kid outside while she patrols for Ahsoka. Whatever, that's their bag. We get a semi-obvious reveal there with the kid. We'll get into that later. Ahsoka does more stuff in the temple. Ahsoka comes out of the temple because the team finds her. And then Ahsoka figures out that she can follow Sabine without having the ring, which they have the destroyed parts, they get recovered of the star map. And Ahsoka figures out, we'll follow the space whales and they'll hopefully bring us to her. I don't know. It's the whole episode is just, it's an exercise in pointless futility. It's like things happen and then more things happen. And then more things happen, but nobody ever stops to take time to develop anything meaningfully. Case in point, I watched the episode twice, and while I like the performances, I don't have anything bad to say about the actors, except I don't think they're given a lot to do here. I like Hayden Christensen because I like him later in life now, looking back on the Vader role and kind of embracing it a little bit. As fans, I think, have embraced him more after kind of the general suck quality of the sequel trilogy. He's had a pretty good fan response every time he turns up now. But, his bringing Ahsoka back in time as younger Ahsoka from the Clone Wars and de-aging each of them to a couple of different points in their life where, they're a lot younger and then they're right around episode 3 younger. It was kind of cool, but it's fake. There's nothing to it. There's no depth to it at all. Star Wars is hooked on this notion now, I think in response to Rey backlash with the no training. And now they're overselling on it's all about the training. You have to train. There's more to learn. You have to train. But then they don't actually do anything. They don't actually show you what the training entails. They just keep saying, I have more to teach you. And the more to teach you always ends up being this 15 to 20 second lightsaber duel, as if that's all the Force represents or has to teach, is how to use a laser sword. And then nothing. And that's case in point this episode here, is Anakin brings Ahsoka back in time to a couple of key battles in the Clone Wars, and then another battle at the Fall of Mandalore that he wasn't present for as Anakin, obviously, because, other things had happened in his lifetime. And it just ends with a clumsy lightsaber duel where, they re-digital up his face into a semi younger Hayden Christensen Anakin thing with the yellow eyes with the red tinge, before they stuck him in the Vader suit in episode 3. He has the red lightsaber now. They duel on one of the Veil of the Force bridges, and she's like, oh, you look like you got nothing left to teach, and he goes, I haven't taught you anything. And he cuts one of the the Veil of the Force bridges, and she falls into a flashback, and they duel again and again, and then she wins the duel by the slowest, clumsiest disarming technique I think I've ever seen in any medium featuring a sword battle. I don't know. And that was it. So Anakin Skywalker gets disarmed of his weapon and doesn't just go right into a force choke to kill this chick. I mean, I don't know, whatever. That's whatever reason, story, they gotta do what they gotta do. But there's no philosophy, there's no spirituality, there's no magic, there's no mystique to it at all. It's just, there's more to teach. You have nothing left to teach. I didn't teach you this. And then nothing. It counts for nothing. And then outside of that, we get Mother of the Year Hera, who's flying around. They're searching. They got X-Wings on top of each other, scanning the ocean for Ahsoka, who fell in. And I'm like, these X-Wings could probably cover more ground if they put more than 1.5 meters between their formation. But okay, I mean, I'm not running that. I'm not the squadron leader there. But like, they're scanning for Ahsoka, who's been in the water for like God knows how long a day, and how long does it take to get from where they came from to where she went in the water? I don't know. Apparently her species can breathe underwater or hold their breath a long amount of time. I'm not an expert in xenobiology, so you guys tell me in the comments below. Is there something in the lore that suggests Ahsoka's species can hold her breath for 3 days? I don't know. So they're scanning for her, and Mother of the Year Hera has left her kid, her 7-year-old bad child actor. No offense, kid, but I mean, take a couple of lessons. You're not as obnoxious as other child actors that we've seen, but like, is this like a Lucas mandatory like hiring thing that you just have to be like the worst child actor ever? Like, I don't know, maybe not that bad, but it's kind of grating. Like, he's hanging out with Chopper. He's by the water's edge. We get the impression that he can hear the lightsabers, battling, on the other side of the Veil of the Force. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. He's Kanan Jarrus' son. He's probably Force sensitive. That makes sense. I didn't begrudge them any of that stuff. It was just kind of clumsy. And I'm like, well, did she fall into the water because they find her in the water, or did she fall into the Veil of the Force? And how is he hearing that through not the Veil of the Force if he didn't fall into the water? So there's just like there's plot. It's not like it's plot holes, but it's kind of like there's just breaks in like logic, and that it adds up over time, and it makes for a frustrating viewing experience. But anyway, he asked his mother to fly lower, like run the patrol one more time, because Captain Carson's like, listen, the fleet's calling. If we don't call in soon, they're sending people out. We're almost out of fuel. Like, are we gonna call this search, or what are we gonna do? The kid's like, Mom, you gotta fly lower. You gotta get as close to the water as you can. I can hear it. I know she's out there. They do. They find her. They do a deep water rescue. That kind of and that it's nothing to it's nothing to bitch and whine about. But it's like it's one more thing. It's like, of course, I don't want to say it, but I'm gonna say it. There are no dudes in this show, like, at all. Like, and it's not bad that there are no guys in the show, but like, there's the captain of the X-Wing squad, who's kind of a doof. Like, his dialogue paints him as kind of a doof in this show. Balin's not in this episode alone, and the droid has a male voice, but it's a droid, right? It's like, where are the dudes here? Like I don't get it. It's Star Wars. It's still like as much as Kathleen Kennedy wants it to be the Force's female, the dominant demographic for this IP is skews male. Just how it is. It's nothing. It's not bad. Whatever. The dominant demographic for Barbie skews largely female, and that's okay. Nobody at the movie theater of Barbie told me I couldn't go in and watch it and review it and participate with people watching it. Same thing with Star Wars, dude. It's mostly for guys, and that's okay. Ladies have always been welcome. Whatever. But like, Hera's the general, Ahsoka's the Jedi, Sabine's the apprentice. The one bad guy's apprentice is a female. The head bad guy, who doesn't do anything in this episode either, because the bad guys aren't in this episode more or less at all. The Baroness is a female. Mon Mothma is the head of the council. The rescue diver that goes in the water after Ahsoka is a female. The obligatory intercepting rebel fleet that comes to bring Hera back after she goes on the unauthorized mission, like the fleet commander of that is a female. The helmsperson of that vessel, also a female. It's like it's so like, it shouldn't matter, but it's just so glaringly over the top that it's kind of like I can't not see it, because it's just present. There's it's girls wall to wall, which whatever. It's fine as long as y'all are doing something interesting, but like, there's nothing interesting that happens here. Even with the stuff that comes at the end, like Ahsoka gets the 2 broken halves of the star map from the droid. And they're like, oh, we're fucked. We can't put it back together. It's destroyed. And then she apparently had a skill point left because she unlocks the Force artifact memory power from Jedi Fallen Order. Because all of a sudden she's holding the broken halves of the star map, and she's hearing echoes, and she can hear, I don't remember all of it, but I think she hears Balin basically enticing Sabine to come along willingly. So she knows that Sabine's alive at the point that she left the planet anyway, and that she left with the bad guy. So she's out there, and she sorts that shit. And then she has this other like epiphany. She looks up, sure as shit through the clouds, there's a pod of Purgils, space whales, whatever we're calling them. And she's like, okay, so we don't have the star map. We can just follow them. And I'm like, that's a head scratcher. We're going to follow the animals who may or may not be the same pod of animals that were on Lothal, where Ezra and Thrawn got shot into hyperspace on their migratory route and are now in parts unknown. We're on a whole different planet, and we're assuming that these animals here are the same animals that were in this other planet, and that their migratory route's going to go the same way to where Thrawn and Ezra are. Okay, I mean, it's a stretch, but, you know, I guess we do the trust in the Force thing in this household, so I mean, I guess maybe that's a thing. And, like, so she lays the plan on Hera. You know, we don't have the hyperspace jumper, but we're gonna go with them. And by go with them, the space whales, she intends to Jonah the whale, the Fulcrum ship, into the biggest whale's mouth, because she had another point left on the skill tree, and she unlocked Force Commune with Nature. And she, you know, they do the outstretched hand, the close the eyes thing, the music swells, and the biggest whale opens its mouth. It has baleen teeth, so it's, you know, it's out there filtering the cosmos for, you know, plankton, I guess. And they fly the ship in, and the thing, it closes, and it's the end of the episode. The whales jump to hyperspace, which is fucking hilarious, because their tails light up blue, so you know the hyperdrives are powering up. You wouldn't know they were about to go to light speed unless some shit started to glow. Star Trek, Star Wars, the other 5 million things that jump to light speed. You know, the animals do that shit too. Otherwise, you would know it's hyperspace. And then they cut to credits. I mean, that's the episode in a nutshell. It's like, she knew everything she needed to know without having to go through without jumping any hoop to figure it out. Like, she needed a new power to unlock Force Echo from the map, and she had it. She needed a new power to talk to the space whales to get her, you know, to make it okay that she flies with them. So she got it. You know, the same thing, you could say the same thing with the kid, to a lesser degree. Like, they needed to find Ahsoka. They couldn't find her on scans. So they needed a half Jedi kid to convince them to fly lower. Now, I don't know what you guys know about, you know, scans, targeting, radars, things like that, but you'd think that the difference between a sophisticated, you know, computer running like whatever scans they use would cover the distance into the water enough to, you know, to scan for life signs, that a difference of flying lower by 10 feet and like busting through the crests of waves with the ghost shouldn't have made the difference to finding her, assuming she could breathe for 4 days underwater by herself anyway. I don't know, like, whatever, that's cool. But they needed that to happen, so it happened. You know, and I guess that let me loop back before I wrap up, because again, I think the comparison I'll make, you know, when I'm wrapping up, is to that episode of The Last of Us on HBO. Like, all the stuff with Anakin was okay, because I like seeing Hayden Christensen, but Disney knows that. They know we like seeing that, but he didn't do anything. He didn't teach her anything. He just kept reminding her that he taught her the stuff she needed to survive. But she's already an experienced, like, person, not even just Jedi or warrior. She's an experienced person by the point of this show. So her getting her ass knocked off a cliff by Baylan Skoll for whatever reason, like he got the upper hand and knocked her down, like, being reminded you have all you need isn't progression. It's not development of the character. If she had everything she needed, she should have fucked Baylan Skoll up, chokeslammed his apprentice, taken the map, and gone after Sabine, and gone after, you know, Thrawn. But she didn't. There is something she needs to know. So they keep referencing training and training and training, but all we get are flashbacks of young Ahsoka following Anakin, which they then use as a segue to show how he becomes, you know, his early stages of becoming Vader. And it's just pointless. It's just cool to see stylized, de-aged Hayden Christensen looking like Clone Wars Anakin, because one of the flashbacks ages him to that point with like the not so wavy hair. It's a little longer than the original, you know, cut that he had in Attack of the Clones. It's definitely the Clone Wars version of him. You know, it's cool seeing the younger child actor who played young Gamora in Endgame and in Infinity War. That's kind of cool. I guess that actress kind of on the rise. I think she was in Barbie, by the way. I think that was the daughter, if I'm not mistaken, like the real world daughter. So I mean, that was cool seeing her at that different point here. And I gotta tell you, I thought the episode was off to at least a decent start, because, you know, the first time he shows up in the flashback, he calls her Snips, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, we're gonna go down that road. And I was like all warm and fuzzy for a second, but then it goes nowhere. You know, that's why the thumbnail's pretty but pointless. Like, there's decent imagery. Like, the flashbacks are all, you know, they're ominous and creepy because it's like that glowed out battlefield thing that Star Wars does, where the clones are always advancing this way and this blaster's coming back at him and glowing lightsabers. Anakin kind of like leads the charge. So there's cool stuff there. There's cool stuff on the planet that had, you know, where the star map was housed, you know, with the red trees. They had a really cool, like, opening shot of like the tide crashing against the mountains. It was very TLJ reminiscent. TLJ sucked, but it was gorgeously shot. I'll give him that at least. You know, the music here, pretty slapping at multiple points during the episodes, especially at the end where she's convening with the space whales to hitch her ride. So I mean, there's technically sound things that happen in the episode, but the comp I'll make, like I was saying, is to The Last of Us, to the Bill and Frank episode. That episode, as we've said on the channel, was you know, a nicely done, you know, bottle episode of two characters in their particular situation, you know, shot well, acted well, written well, directed well, all those good things. But it didn't do anything to move the actual story of The Last of Us forward. If we yeeted, as my son would say, he thinks that's a new word because he's 7.5. That shit's hilarious. Right? If we took the episode 3 out of Last of Us altogether, that story still happens. You know, they still end up at Bill's place, get the car, get the supplies, and get the fuck out of Dodge or Boston or wherever it was. It was somewhere Mass. This episode could have been reduced all the way down to they find the cut in half pieces of the orb. You know, like if episode 4 had ended and Ahsoka hadn't gone off the thing, like just say Balin Scroll cold cock Sabine, they throw her on a ship, he slices the map in half, and then they go, and then they can't be followed because, you know, Hera's ship is disabled, Ahsoka's ship is disabled, whatever. All Ahsoka needs to do is pick those two things up, and she goes, oh shit, like they're still going here, she's still alive, she's not dead, and then look up and see the whales and do the exact same plan. So the episode really only showed us cool shit that happened with Anakin that involved him talking to her about, you know, war is ugly and there's a price to be paid and this and that. All true stuff, and King Z probably going to talk about some of that stuff as a soldier himself. But it taught her nothing new. It developed her character in no way. Like, I still know nothing new about her that I didn't know having watched Rebels and some of Clone Wars myself. So we don't know anything new about her. We don't know anything more about the relationship she had with Sabine. It's only still the hinted at crap we've got. We know nothing more about the villains because they're not in the episode at all. It's like the episode is a pretty but pointless nothing burger as far as I'm concerned. It's like there's nothing. The only value to be obtained from this episode in a rewatch is if you really needed to see Hayden Christensen being Anakin again after the debacle that was Kenobi. And I don't know how much that's going to count for anybody, but I'll say this. It's like, if you were hoping that they were going to use the Veil of the Force to retcon the sequel trilogy, kiss that shit goodbye. That ain't going to happen. Like that's out. That's not a thing. You know, if you were hoping there was going to be some interweaving of the Veil of the Force going forward, like I don't think so. I think they used that as the mechanism to give you Anakin, and then that's it. Like they're going forward. They only have 3 episodes left. They're not revisiting training in Temple going forward. Like that's a wrap. And I just think it's disappointing. You know, like there was another way to do this show, and you know, maybe King Z and I can do a series wrap up where we give you what will we have done different version for like the whole show view. Let us know in the comments below if you'd like to hear that, by the way, because those are some things we're thinking about doing, like, you know, like the what would you do version of a show. But yeah, guys, I think I'm gonna be out. I think that I've seen enough of this episode and the 2 views. I don't see myself going back to watch it again without Ray Stevenson absolutely dominating the screen through like sheer force of presence and will. There's nothing to do here. Like Rosario Dawson's fine. She's a very likable person. I like her in all the things that I see her in. But this older version of Ahsoka isn't fun. Like the fun was her on Clone Wars is her relationship with Anakin, the back and forth and how much they're alike in different ways. There's no repartee here. There's no, if they had stuck her with Sabine for 5 episodes so they could have that exchange, that'd be one thing, but we don't have that. She's just there to you know, look, you know, introspective and do the arm fold and like, listen, take a shot every time Ahsoka crosses her arms, you're bombed 4 minutes in. Like that, it's that simple, folks. But that's going to be it for me, guys. That was Ahsoka episode 5. Thanks for sticking around and checking us out. We're going to try and get our scheduling act together as soon as King Z can secure adequate lodgings that provide 21st century internet connection so we can get back to live stream. But in the meantime, we're going to try and do some solo stuff as we go. We are entering Halloween season, as he is fond of pointing out. So, stay tuned for all the Halloween horror movie goodness that we're going to do. We do have a couple of ideas we're going to roll out. But like I said, let us know in the comments below what you'd like to see for Halloween season, some movie reviews, series reviews. Anybody want us to check out Saw 10? or Saw X, or whatever you kids are calling it. I'll probably check that out. I'm a fan of the franchise. Nothing crazy, but I enjoy what I enjoy. But I will see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.